The universe, vast and endless, had always been a source of awe and fear for humankind. For centuries, Earth had stood as a tiny, fragile speck in the cosmos, its inhabitants oblivious to the great dangers lurking just beyond their reach. Humanity had grown, evolved, and conquered the unknown within their own planet, but they were naive. They had never fully understood the sheer scale of hostility that awaited them out in the stars. That all changed the day humanity made first contact. It wasn't a peaceful moment. No soft glow of diplomatic lights or serene introductions. The alien vessel that entered Earth's solar system was immense, dwarfing anything humanity had ever created. At first, Earth's leaders believed it was a satellite, perhaps another probe from a distant race curious about the tiny blue planet. But the moment the ship entered the atmosphere, the truth became horrifyingly clear. This was no diplomatic envoy, it was an invasion. The vessel, made of alien metals and incomprehensible materials, did not land. Instead, it loomed above the Earth's major cities, casting long shadows over nations unprepared for a confrontation of this scale. There was no communication, just silence. The world's military powers mobilized, sending their most advanced fleets into the void to intercept, but all efforts were futile. The aliens had already demonstrated their superiority. When Earth's defense forces approached, the ship unleashed a devastating weapon that crippled entire fleets, leaving them floating in space, disabled and lifeless. The world watched in horror as the first wave of alien forces began to descend to the surface. The beings that emerged were not like the peaceful visitors that had been dreamed of in science fiction. They were tall, armored figures, humanoid but not human. Their faces were hidden behind masks, their eyes glowing with an eerie, unnatural light. Clawed hands and armored limbs gave them an imposing appearance that sent chills down the spines of anyone who dared look at them. These were the Tar, a ruthless species bent on claiming any habitable planet they came across. Their motives were simple: they consumed resources, destroyed civilizations, and moved on to the next world in their ever-expanding empire. To them, humanity was no different from the countless other races they had wiped out. To them, Earth was just another obstacle. For the first time in human history, the world was united, not in peace, but in survival. Nations put aside their differences, forging a fragile alliance to resist the invasion. The United Nations, once an organization of political wrangling, became the central command hub for humanity's last stand. Global leaders rallied their people, asking for their patience, their resolve, and their strength. Humanity's only chance lay in their unity and determination. But the Tar were relentless. Within days, entire cities fell. The Tar didn't just conquer, they eradicated any semblance of resistance. Earth's forces fought back, but without the technology and understanding to effectively combat the alien threat, their efforts were hopelessly outmatched. The weapons the Tar wielded were like nothing humanity had ever encountered, energy-based systems that rendered human firearms and tanks useless. The Tar were unyielding, their attacks precise and deadly. In the midst of this chaos, there was a glimmer of hope. Scientists and military strategists, working around the clock, began to analyze the alien technology, looking for any weakness. Among them was Dr. Amelia Hart, a brilliant physicist who had devoted her career to the study of quantum mechanics. She had been studying the energy fluctuations of deep space anomalies when the Tar arrived, and she suspected that there was more to their technology than just brute force. There was a pattern, an order within the chaos. Her breakthrough came when she discovered that the Tar's energy weapons were powered by a form of quantum entanglement, an energy source that was unstable and prone to fluctuations. If they could find a way to disrupt this quantum field, humanity could cripple the aliens' technological advantage. Dr. Hart's discovery sparked a desperate race against time. With the world's remaining military forces scattered, humanity's scientists and engineers began to develop a countermeasure, a weapon capable of disrupting the quantum entanglement of the Tar's energy systems. It was a long shot, but it was their only chance. In the midst of the struggle, Earth's survivors learned a bitter truth: this was not the first time the Tar had invaded a world. Humanity was just another chapter in their long history of destruction. The Tar had wiped out entire civilizations across the galaxy, and now they were here, testing humanity's resolve. But humanity wasn't ready to give up. Against impossible odds, they began to fight back in ways no one had ever imagined. They began to adapt. They learned. They fought with a desperation that only those with everything to lose could muster. And as the first great battle raged on, humanity's true struggle had just begun. The days following the Taurus' brutal invasion were filled with despair. Earth had fallen into chaos, and what little order remained was quickly slipping away. The initial resistance efforts were disorganized, fragmented, and underpowered. But in the darkest hour, the seeds of humanity's defiance began to take root. Dr. Amelia Hart's discovery about the Taurus quantum-based weaponry had ignited the spark of hope, but it wasn't enough to turn the tide just yet. The weapon, though a potential game-changer, was still in the experimental phase. There was no time to waste, no room for error. Earth's military forces were retreating, their most advanced fleets decimated by the alien onslaught, and the survivors of the initial wave were scattered and demoralized. The cities of the world had fallen silent, the hum of human civilization replaced by the alien hum of Tar warships. However, the Tar, though superior in technology and firepower, had underestimated humanity's greatest strength, their adaptability. The survivors, the soldiers, the scientists, and the ordinary citizens who had seen their homes destroyed, began to rebuild, not just cities, but strategies, technologies, and alliances that could level the playing field. In the underground bunkers and hidden laboratories across the world, humanity began to innovate. Every available resource was dedicated to building prototypes of the weapon Dr. Hart had proposed. Her team of physicists, engineers, and military tacticians worked tirelessly, melding human ingenuity with whatever alien technology they could salvage from the wreckage of destroyed Tar ships. The first breakthroughs came in the form of a rudimentary device that could disrupt the energy fields around the Taurus weaponry, but it was imperfect. The prototype worked in theory but lacked the power to be deployed on a large scale. The early stages of resistance came from the remnants of Earth's military forces. Some of the most elite units, scattered and disorganized, began to form small guerrilla factions, striking at Tar supply lines and communication hubs. It wasn't much, but it was a message: humanity wasn't going to lay down without a fight. These forces quickly adapted to Tar tactics, using stealth, sabotage, and surprise to hit the invaders where it hurt the most. Meanwhile, in the hushed backrooms of global military leaders, a new force was quietly taking shape. They were called the Terran Vanguard, an elite, multinational military unit, handpicked from the most capable soldiers left on Earth. The Vanguard's mission was to serve as humanity's spearhead, the first line of defense against the Tar onslaught. They would not rely on traditional methods of warfare. Instead, they would be humanity's shadow in the dark, striking with precision and intelligence rather than raw power. Among them was Commander Sarah Stone, a battle-hardened veteran who had led operations in the harshest environments on Earth. With the loss of her family in the initial Tar assault, she became more than just a soldier, she became a symbol of humanity's refusal to give in. Her command of the Vanguard was seen as a sign that humanity had not lost its heart. Under her leadership, the Vanguard adopted a hit-and-run strategy, constantly staying one step ahead of the Tar. They became a thorn in the alien invaders' side, harassing their supply lines and targeting vulnerable installations. The Tar, initially amused by the scattered resistance, soon found themselves unable to ignore the persistent attacks. It wasn't a force that could defeat them, but it was a force they hadn't anticipated. Every strike left the Tar forces more wary, more cautious. And in that caution, humanity found its edge. However, the true turning point came when Dr. Hart's team, working with the Vanguard's tactical experts, managed to finish the first full-scale version of the quantum disruption weapon. It was still crude, a large, bulky device capable of only a single burst of energy. But it was enough. Humanity now had a fighting chance. The weapon was tested in a small-scale mission, when the Vanguard infiltrated a Tar stronghold that housed one of their primary energy processors. The plan was simple: plant the device, activate it, and retreat before the Tar forces realized what was happening. The mission was a gamble, and it was Commander Stone who led the charge. The night of the operation, the vanguard slipped through the shadows, their movements silent and deliberate. The Tar were unaware of the humans encroaching on their territory, too confident in their superiority. It wasn't until the quantum disruption device was activated and the energy core of the processor began to destabilize that the Tar understood they were under attack. But by then, it was too late. The device emitted a pulse that cracked the Tar's energy shield like glass, rendering their most advanced weapons useless for several precious moments. The vanguard fighters struck hard, their weapons now effective against the Tar forces. It wasn't an overwhelming victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity had inflicted real damage on the Tar. Commander Sarah Stone stood on the ruins of the Tar stronghold, watching as the first flicker of hope ignited in the eyes of the soldiers around her. The battle for Earth was far from over, but the Tar had just learned something crucial. Humanity was not just surviving. They were evolving. And the universe would soon learn that humanity's battle for survival was a war the Tar would never be able to win. As the vanguard moved to regroup and prepare for the next phase of the resistance, one thing was clear: Earth was no longer the helpless planet the Tar had thought it was. Humanity was fighting back, and they were going to win. The Tar had underestimated humanity's resolve. What had once been a world teetering on the edge of annihilation had begun to rise from the ashes, fueled by a blend of desperation, ingenuity, and the indomitable will to survive. The victory at the Tar stronghold had become a rallying cry, not just for Earth's military forces but for every person across the planet. The resistance was no longer a scattered group of isolated cells, it was a movement, a united front with a single goal: to reclaim Earth and drive the invaders from their home. The world's surviving leaders came together for the first time since the invasion began. In secret, they gathered in an underground command center, one of the few remaining places still untouched by the Tar. The remnants of the United Nations, now a war council, reviewed reports of the vanguard's success and discussed the next steps. It was clear that humanity had no chance of defeating the Tar with conventional tactics alone. The alien invaders were too powerful, their technology too advanced. But humanity was resourceful, and their new weapon, Dr. Hart's quantum disruption device, had given them a chance. Dr. Hart was now the cornerstone of Earth's scientific efforts. Her team, working in conjunction with military forces, had managed to refine the disruption technology. They began developing larger, more efficient versions of the weapon, capable of disabling entire Tar ships and fleets. But the real challenge lay in scaling the technology. If humanity could disrupt the Tar's energy systems on a larger scale, they could cripple the alien war machine and force them into retreat. But that was a big if. Meanwhile, the Tar, enraged by the losses they had sustained on Earth, began to adapt. They realized that their initial tactics of overwhelming firepower and sheer numbers would not be enough. They had underestimated the resilience and creativity of humanity. In response, the Tar deployed their most terrifying weapon yet, a new breed of shock troops, genetically engineered for combat in hostile environments. These warriors, known as the Teresh, were bred for brutality, designed to hunt and kill with merciless precision. Armed with weapons that could slice through steel and energy shields that made them nearly invulnerable, the Teresh were the Tar's final answer to humanity's resistance. The vanguard, under the leadership of Commander Sarah Stone, was tasked with disrupting the Tar's supply chains and weakening their front lines. But when the Teresh arrived, everything changed. The Tar had unleashed their elite warriors on Earth, and they were as brutal as they were efficient. Entire squads of human soldiers were wiped out in minutes, and those who survived were forced into retreat. The Teresh weren't just soldiers, they were hunters, stalking humanity's remaining forces with terrifying accuracy. The first clash between the vanguard and the Teresh was devastating. Commander Stone had led her forces into what was supposed to be a routine mission to sabotage a Tar communications relay. But the moment they entered the area, they were ambushed by a unit of Teresh. The battle that followed was brutal. Human soldiers fought valiantly, but they were no match for the genetically enhanced warriors. Stone herself barely escaped with her life, her unit decimated by the relentless assault. In the aftermath of the attack, the vanguard was forced to reconsider their tactics. the Teresh were unlike anything they had faced before. Their weapons were precise, their tactics deadly. Humanity had no choice but to find a way to counter this new threat if they were to have any hope of survival. It was then that Dr. Hart's team made a breakthrough. After studying the Taurus genetic modifications and their advanced technology, they realized that the Teresh's invulnerability was not complete. Their genetic enhancements relied on a delicate balance of energy, which made them dependent on the Taurus energy network. If the quantum disruption technology could be deployed on a larger scale, it might be able to disrupt the Teresh's energy balance, rendering them vulnerable. But there was a catch. The disruption device had to be placed directly within a Tar energy nexus, the heart of their power systems. This meant infiltrating one of their heavily guarded fortresses, something that seemed impossible, given the Teresh's relentless pursuit of human forces. The task was monumental, but the alternative was clear: humanity would face extinction. The War Council, with Dr. Hart and Commander Stone at the helm, devised a daring plan. They would target a Tar energy fortress on the outskirts of the planet's remaining strongholds, a location that had been a mystery to human intelligence. This fortress, hidden in the depths of Earth's most desolate regions, was home to a massive Tar energy nexus, a source of power that not only fueled their armies but also provided the energy to maintain the Teresh's invulnerability. Commander Stone, ever the pragmatic leader, knew the risks. This would be a suicide mission for anyone involved, but it was humanity's only chance. The vanguard would be tasked with leading the assault, supported by a team of elite soldiers and scientists. The mission would be dangerous, perhaps even doomed, but if they succeeded, it could turn the tide of the war. As preparations for the mission began, the weight of what was at stake settled heavily on Commander Stone's shoulders. Earth's survival hung in the balance, and the world had placed its trust in her. She knew that she was about to lead her people into the heart of enemy territory, a place where few would return. But the mission had to succeed. The fate of humanity depended on it. And so, with the Tar closing in on Earth's last bastions of resistance, the stage was set for the next phase of humanity's battle for survival. The storm was rising, and only one thing was certain: the outcome of this war would define humanity forever. The time for preparation was over. The world had come together in a final, desperate bid to strike at the heart of the Tar war machine. Earth's last chance for survival lay in a fortress hidden deep within the planet's desolate wastelands. The Tar's energy nexus was located there, an immense, heavily fortified structure that powered their weapons and sustained the Teresh warriors. It was the beating heart of their invasion, and humanity's only hope was to infiltrate it and plant Dr. Hart's enhanced quantum disruption device at its core. But doing so would mean traversing territory controlled by the Tar's deadliest forces and facing an unknown enemy defense system that had so far kept even the most advanced human weapons at bay. Commander Sarah Stone stood in the war room, flanked by Dr. Amelia Hart and her team of scientists. Maps and holographic projections of the Tar fortress covered the walls. The stakes had never been higher, and the weight of the mission bore down on every member of the team. But Commander Stone had seen too much to back down now. Her soldiers were ready for this final, all-or-nothing assault. If humanity's survival depended on this mission, then it would not fail. The fortress itself was located in a remote region of Earth, a place where the planet's once vibrant ecosystems had been ravaged by Tar bombardments. The area was inhospitable, teeming with the alien invaders' patrols and heavily guarded. The Tar had fortified the location with shielded barriers, energy fields, and defense turrets that would make any conventional assault a suicide mission. There were only a few ways in, and none were guaranteed to succeed. Aerial recon missions had pinpointed a weak point, a section of the fortress's perimeter that was not as heavily defended due to the Tar's underestimation of human resourcefulness. This was their only opening, but it was barely a crack in the wall. The plan was to get in undetected, plant the quantum device at the core of the energy nexus, and then extract before the Tar could mount a counterattack. It was a bold plan, too bold, some argued, but there was no other choice. Commander Stone's vanguard was to lead the assault. The team had spent weeks preparing for the mission, training in stealth, sabotage, and quick strikes. The vanguard's elite soldiers were not just the best of humanity's forces, they were the best of what Earth had to offer. The fate of every living human being rested in their hands. As the assault team gathered at their staging area, the tension was palpable. Stone's face was set in grim determination, her gaze focused ahead. "We've trained for this moment," she said, her voice steady but full of resolve. "This isn't just another mission. This is the fight for humanity's future. We get in, we plant the device, and we get out. There is no plan B." The squad was silent, nodding their understanding. The gravity of the situation was not lost on them. The mission had to succeed. There were no second chances. The strike force moved out under the cover of darkness, using the cover of night to their advantage. The Taurus surveillance systems, though advanced, had not been able to detect the covert preparations of Earth's forces. The vanguard infiltrated the area using specialized cloaking technology and stealth tactics, slipping past Tar patrols without being detected. The closer they got to the fortress, the more dangerous the mission became. Tar shock troops patrolled the perimeter, and the ground was littered with traps designed to detect any intrusion. The vanguard moved like shadows, using silent takedowns and non-lethal weapons to neutralize enemy patrols without alerting the rest of the base. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife as they approached the entrance to the fortress. Commander Stone's heart raced as they reached the outer walls. The Taurus' massive turrets loomed overhead, but they had found the weak point, a heavily guarded service entrance that, if breached, could lead directly to the Nexus. The team set up a quick diversion, using explosives to draw Tar forces away from the entrance long enough for them to breach the walls. The vanguard moved swiftly, planting charges and silently slipping through the breached entrance. They moved through narrow corridors, making their way deeper into the Tar stronghold. As they descended into the heart of the fortress, the temperature dropped, and the air grew thick with the hum of alien technology. The energy nexus was close now, its power thrumming through the walls. But as they approached the core, the Tar finally detected their intrusion. The alarms blared, and the building shook as the Tar sent their elite shock troops to intercept them. Commander Stone's heart skipped a beat. The timing was off. They needed more time to plant the quantum disruption device. "Get to the core. Move, move, move," she shouted, leading the charge as the squad sprinted toward the central chamber. Blasts of alien energy slammed into the walls around them, and the sound of Tar weapons filled the air. The vanguard returned fire, but the Teresh warriors had arrived, and they were closing in. The battle erupted in full force as human soldiers and Tar shock troops clashed. Stone's heart pounded as she fought off a Tar warrior with a plasma blade, her movements a blur as she struck with precision. The vanguard soldiers fought fiercely, but they were outnumbered. Every moment counted now. With the core in sight, Dr. Hart's team pushed forward, carrying the quantum device. They reached the energy nexus at the center of the fortress, but the Taurus elite guards were closing in fast. The pressure was unbearable. Dr. Hart rushed to set the device in place, her hands shaking as she calibrated it under fire. The Tar were relentless, but the human forces pushed back, giving the scientists just enough time. "Almost there," Dr. Hart yelled. As the device activated, a surge of energy flooded the chamber. The quantum disruption pulse erupted with a blinding flash. The energy field around the Taurus nexus flickered, then collapsed entirely. The entire fortress shook, and the Taurus energy systems began to fail. Their weapons shut down. The Teresh, once invincible, dropped to the ground, their energy balance shattered. But the mission wasn't over yet. The Tar, though weakened, were not finished. The vanguard had to fight their way out before the Tar could mount a full counterattack. The race against time had begun. As the walls of the fortress crumbled around them, Commander Stone's voice cut through the chaos. "We're not done yet. Fall back to extraction." The fight for humanity's future was far from over, but in this moment, the Tar had learned that they were not invincible. Humanity had found their weakness, and with it, the seeds of victory were sown. The quantum disruption device had done its job. The Taurus energy nexus had been crippled, their once unstoppable weapons rendered useless. But the war was far from over. The fortress, though weakened, was still standing, and the Tar had begun to adapt. Their systems would be restructured, their warriors regrouped. The battle for Earth was shifting into a new phase. As Commander Sarah Stone and the Vanguard fought their way out of the collapsing Tar stronghold, the situation outside was just as dire. The Tar had realized that Earth wasn't just a conquered world. Humanity was an enemy they could not ignore, an enemy that could no longer be written off as primitive or easily subjugated. Their defeat at the energy nexus was the first clear indication that humanity could, and would, fight back. Stone's forces had managed to escape the chaos of the fortress, but many had not. The loss was staggering. The Vanguard had been decimated in the fight, and their numbers were severely reduced. Yet, despite the loss, the momentum had shifted in humanity's favor. They now had a chance to make their next move, but it required them to act quickly, before the Tar could rally and retaliate. As the remnants of the Vanguard regrouped, Stone received reports from all over Earth. Resistance movements had flourished in the wake of the successful strike on the Taurus Nexus. What was once a scattered effort had now turned into a global coalition of rebels, soldiers, scientists, and civilians, all united by the singular goal of defeating the alien invaders. And despite the losses, the momentum was on their side. Every day that passed brought new victories, new successes, and new hope. Dr. Amelia Hart's breakthrough with the quantum disruption technology had proved invaluable. Her team had developed a new, portable version of the weapon, capable of disabling Tar energy systems on a smaller scale, but with greater precision. This new device could be used to disrupt Tar ships in orbit, taking down their fleets one by one. But this was only a temporary advantage. The Tar had the resources to rebuild, adapt, and replenish their forces faster than humanity could keep up. The War Council now faced a difficult choice: continue fighting a war of attrition and rely on small victories, or strike directly at the heart of the Taurus command structure and end the conflict once and for all. The Council, with Dr. Hart's counsel and Commander Stone's strategic mind, opted for the latter. The time had come to take the fight to the Tar homeworld. A new plan was formed, a multi-phased assault that would take humanity's forces into the heart of Tar space, strike directly at their command centers, and cripple their ability to coordinate the war effort. This would be the ultimate gamble, a final push that would either win the war or end in disaster. For the first time, humanity would face the Tar on their own turf. The stakes were higher than ever. Earth's remaining military assets, now bolstered by the various global resistance groups, would launch an assault on the Taurus home planet, a world that was as alien to them as any could be. But there was a significant challenge. The Tar homeworld was heavily guarded by fleets of advanced warships, and even with their new weapons, humanity had no idea how they would fare against the full might of the Tar. Stone's plan was simple but brutal. Humanity would strike fast and hard, using every available resource to break through the Taurus defenses. The Vanguard would be sent on a suicide mission to infiltrate Tar space, causing as much disruption as possible in the Tar fleet. Meanwhile, Earth's remaining fleets would launch a full-scale assault, using the new quantum disruption devices to disable Tar ships and provide a window of opportunity for the Vanguard to strike at the Taurus Central Command facility. The mission was fraught with peril. The Taurus technology had been further reinforced, and their fleets were as formidable as ever. But the core principle was clear: strike hard, disrupt their systems, and show the Tar that humanity would never back down. Commander Stone, knowing the risks, assembled her team of elite soldiers for the mission. "This is it," she said. "We go in, and we hit them where it hurts. No turning back." As the Vanguard's fleet left Earth's orbit and headed into Tar space, the soldiers braced themselves for the unknown. The path ahead was fraught with danger, but there was no alternative. The Tar had already taken so much from humanity. This was their chance to take back everything. The journey to the Tar homeworld took them deep into the heart of enemy space. As they neared their destination, they encountered Tar ships in droves, patrolling the borders of their domain. The Vanguard moved swiftly and silently, using stealth tactics to evade the enemy fleet and strike with deadly precision. Every maneuver, every strike was calculated to create maximum damage while minimizing their own losses. But the Tar had been preparing for this. They had anticipated that humanity would make a final push, and they had deployed a new class of warship, massive, heavily armored vessels that dwarfed anything humanity had encountered so far. These ships were equipped with powerful energy weapons and shield generators designed to withstand even the most advanced human strikes. Despite this, the Vanguard continued their assault, knowing that the ultimate goal was to disable the Tar's command center. They struck at the Tar fleets with precision, targeting the weak points in their ships and creating chaos in the enemy ranks. The battle raged across the stars, with humanity's forces dealing blow after blow, even as they were forced to endure the Tar's relentless counterattacks. As the Vanguard reached the heart of Tar space, they finally arrived at the Tar command station, a massive structure orbiting the homeworld itself. The final phase of their mission had begun. Now, it was up to Commander Stone and her team to infiltrate the station and disable the Tar's central command systems. Inside the command station, the Tar's leaders waited, unaware that the humans had breached their defenses. But humanity had come too far to fail now. Every step taken in this war had led to this moment. The heart of the beast was within their grasp. The endgame was near, and the Tar would soon realize that they had underestimated humanity's resolve once more. The Tar homeworld loomed before Commander Sarah Stone and her elite Vanguard team. Their assault on the Tar command station was the culmination of years of resistance, desperate gambles, and sacrifices. This was humanity's last chance to end the war and secure their survival. As the Vanguard's ships approached the immense space station, an oppressive silence fell over the command center. Every member of Stone's team understood the stakes. Failure meant extinction. Success meant the survival of humanity. The Tar command station, a monolithic structure bristling with energy shields and defensive turrets, was the heart of the Tar war effort. It housed their central command, intelligence, and communications, everything that coordinated their forces across the galaxy. Taking it down would send a shockwave through the Tar military, disorienting them and breaking their ability to maintain the offensive. The Tar would be crippled, their invasion halted, and humanity would finally have the upper hand. Commander Stone's fleet was spread across a vast swath of space, laying down a diversion to draw the Tar's attention away from the true objective. They had to buy time for the Vanguard strike team to infiltrate the command station. The plan was risky, but it was the only option. All ships ready for the first strike, Stone's voice crackled over the comms. We give them hell, and we hit them fast. No hesitation. With her command given, the fleet surged forward, launching an all-out assault on the Tar's outer defenses. The sky was filled with fire as energy blasts lit up the void of space, detonating in brilliant flashes. Tar warships retaliated with overwhelming firepower, but Stone's forces were well coordinated, expertly evading incoming blasts while striking at weak points in the enemy fleet. Explosions rocked Tar ships, one after another, as the human fleet worked in perfect unison to draw the Tar's attention away from the Vanguard's true mission. Meanwhile, Stone's team was preparing to breach the Tar command station. The massive fortress hung in orbit like a dark monolith, with its shields now flashing with hostile intent. The Vanguard's infiltration team, a carefully selected group of the best soldiers and scientists, donned their gear, checking their weapons one last time. Dr. Amelia Hart, who had been at the heart of the technology that allowed them to strike back at the Tar, was once again leading the charge. With her was Commander Stone, whose leadership had inspired humanity to this moment, and the remaining soldiers of the Vanguard, who had fought tooth and nail to protect what was left of their world. Stay focused, everyone, Stone said as she looked over her team. We're not just attacking the Tar. We're ending this war. This is for everyone who's lost someone, for every life the Tar took. Do not fail. With the order given, the team launched their strike. Their ships entered the outer ring of the Tar command station, narrowly avoiding enemy fire and incoming Tar fighter squadrons. Despite the chaos of battle, the Vanguard maintained its composure. They had been through worse. As they made their way closer, the energy shields surrounding the command station began to pulse and crackle, but they were still operational. The team had one chance, one opportunity to break through. Using advanced cloaking technology and high-powered stealth weapons, they disabled a key section of the station's energy grid. The tar shields flickered for a brief moment, a window of vulnerability that allowed the Vanguard to enter. They moved in fast. The station's halls were vast, illuminated by cold, alien lights that gave everything an eerie, mechanical feel. The walls hummed with the sound of tar machinery, a constant reminder of the invaders' power. But Stone and her team moved with purpose, knowing that the longer they lingered, the more likely they were to be detected. Through the twisting corridors, the Vanguard encountered scattered resistance, small squads of tar troops and automated defense drones, but they were no match for the elite humans. The team fought their way deeper into the heart of the command station, with Dr. Hart leading the way to the central control room. Finally, they reached it. The TAR Central Command was a towering chamber, filled with alien technology that pulsed with an unnatural energy. At the heart of the room stood a massive console, the nerve center of TAR operations. It was here that the war was being directed, where the TAR strategy and coordination came to life. But before they could approach, a heavy door slammed shut, trapping them inside. The TAR had anticipated their move. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward, one of the TAR's highest commanders. His presence radiated a chilling, almost otherworldly power. He was no mere general, he was the architect of the TAR's invasion, the one who had orchestrated the relentless assault on Earth. The commander had arrived. "I've been expecting you, humans," the TAR commander's voice echoed, distorted and hollow through the chamber's speakers. "You think you can stop us? We are a force beyond your comprehension. You cannot comprehend the depth of our superiority." Commander Stone drew her weapon, her eyes narrowing. "We don't need to understand. We only need to survive. And you've underestimated us for the last time." The room erupted in chaos as the Vanguard engaged in a furious battle with the TAR commander and his elite guard. Blasts of energy and the hiss of plasma weapons filled the air, the room becoming a battlefield of desperate struggle. Stone's heart raced as she fought, knowing the mission could fail in an instant. But as the chaos of battle reached its peak, Dr. Hart finally reached the central console. Her hands moved with surgical precision, activating the quantum disruption device that had been specially modified for this moment. The device hummed to life, sending a pulse of energy into the TAR command center. The station trembled as the energy systems began to destabilize. The TAR commander, enraged, turned to stop them, but it was too late. The disruption had already begun. The entire system began to collapse. His forces were already disoriented, their connection to the TAR war network severed. "You've lost," Stone shouted as the room shook, the walls groaning under the strain of the failing system. The TAR commander let out an inhuman roar as his systems flickered and failed. "You may have won this battle, but the war is far from over," he hissed. Before Stone could respond, the room erupted in a final explosion. The command station began to crumble, and the Vanguard scrambled to escape. The countdown to humanity's final victory had begun. The war was not over, but for the first time in years, humanity had the upper hand. The TAR were vulnerable. Their command center was destroyed. And the universe would soon learn that humans, against all odds, were a force to be reckoned with. The TAR command station was collapsing. Fires raged across its corridors, and explosions ripped through its core as the quantum disruption device did its work. Alarms blared in an alien tongue, lights flickered in and out, and the gravity fields destabilized, making movement erratic. Commander Sarah Stone didn't hesitate. "Move! Everyone, back to the extraction point." Dr. Amelia Hart barely had time to secure her data pad, which held the final sequence of the quantum disruption pulse, before they were running. The TAR commander had vanished in the chaos, either dead or retreating to make his last stand elsewhere. It didn't matter. The mission had succeeded. They fought their way back to their stolen TAR transport, dodging falling debris in last-ditch defenses that were more desperate than strategic. Stone shot down 2 TAR warriors who lunged at them, while Sergeant Kieran Valdez covered their rear, suppressing enemy reinforcements. The moment they cleared the final hangar bay, a massive explosion rippled through the station. Stone slammed the hatch closed, and their ship lurched into motion, speeding toward the human fleet waiting beyond the carnage. Outside, the battle was still raging, but the tide had turned. The loss of the command station had thrown the Tar forces into disarray. Their once coordinated formations now moved sluggishly, their responses delayed, their tactics unraveling. With their central intelligence severed, the Tar fleets were like a headless beast, still deadly, but bleeding out fast. Status? Stone demanded as they broke atmosphere, heading toward the heart of the human fleet. Lieutenant Raj Patel's voice came through the comms, overwhelmed but triumphant. Commander, we're winning. The Tar fleets are crumbling across all fronts. They can't adapt fast enough. The Vanguard's fleet, battered but still standing, had taken advantage of the Tar confusion. Wave after wave of human ships poured through the breach, hammering the enemy with relentless fire. In orbit around the Tar homeworld, the battle had turned into a massacre, but for once, humanity wasn't on the losing end. Stone's transport docked with the Resolute, the flagship of the human resistance, just as reports flooded in from across the battlefield. Earth's forces were pushing forward, breaking through once impenetrable Tar defenses. Admiral Erickson, his face bloodied but alive on the holographic display, looked at Stone with something close to disbelief. "It's happening, Commander. We've got them." A message crackled through the system, a desperate, frantic Tar transmission. "Cease fire. We seek terms." Humanity had never heard those words from the Tar before. The bridge of the Resolute fell silent. For the first time since the war began, the invaders were asking for peace. Stone exhaled, gripping the edge of the console. "They're stalling," she said. "They need time to regroup." Admiral Erickson nodded. "Agreed. But we're not here for extermination. We're here for survival." The War Council convened, and for the first time, humanity had the power to dictate the terms. The Tar, now leaderless and fractured, had two choices: unconditional retreat from human space or complete annihilation. It wasn't a decision the Tar had ever thought they would face. They had assumed humanity would crumble like every species before them. But humans had done the impossible, not just resisted, but fought back and won. The negotiations were brief. The Tar, facing total destruction, withdrew from human space. Their empire, once seen as an unstoppable force, began to fracture. Rebellions in their other conquered worlds ignited. The war was over, not just for humanity, but for the galaxy. But Earth did not celebrate in the way victors usually do. The cost had been staggering: billions dead, entire cities wiped from existence, generations lost to war. Humanity had won, but at what cost? As the human fleet returned to Earth, they looked upon a world that was scarred but not broken. They had survived the impossible, defied an empire that had stood for millennia. And yet, Stone knew this was only the beginning. The universe had taken notice. The Tar had thought humanity was weak. Now, the galaxy knew the truth. Humanity was a force that would never be conquered. Humanity had changed. And the universe would never be the same again.